Saskatoon's Convention Centre is hot and it is looking good for the future. We have the CEO, Tammy Sweeney, here with us today. Going to shed a little bit of light onto what may be happening in the near future. Tammy, thanks for physically coming down to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I want to talk a bit about you and how you came into the role. You moved here from another city or two, and you have a little bit of a background.
I do. So I've had about 20 years in venue management, different venues from Niagara Falls, Ontario. That's where I spent most of my adult years. And I was at a casino there as well as a convention center. Then moved to run an arena in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and then came here in 2020, right in the heart of the pandemic.
Nothing like getting your feet wet and held
wet.
to the fire. The convention market, if we're talking about there's the downtown event and entertainment district, but there's been a mainstay, TCU Place, the former Centennial Auditorium. Not too many people know about that business side of things and why it's so important. Why should someone watching today know some of the things that we need to improve upon or expand or build new? What is the takeaway from the future of what we need to evolve into?
So when a lot of people don't know the convention center, if they haven't been to TCU Place for a graduation or a gala or fundraising dinner, they might not know what it's for, and they're not used to going, so it doesn't matter or it's not relevant. But when we have an active, vibrant programming calendar in our building, so on a normal year, we might have between 500 and 600 events in the convention center. And so all of those events bring people into not only the convention center, but into the city. And when we have events from national, so whether they're flying in from Toronto or Ottawa or international events, then those are new people into our city that are all staying in our hotels and eating in our restaurants and buying things at our retail stores. So all of that money stays in our community when those visitors and guests come into the city. And they spend a whole lot more than our local folks do on a day-to-day basis. So when we're busy, the city is busy and the city is vibrant, and our businesses do better in the city, and that helps everybody in the city.
Now that's a convention component, the 500 or 600 that you have. That's totally separate than the theater.
Yes. So the theater, we might have about 100 events a year in the theater in a good year. And then, 500 to 600 in a good year in the convention center. We were at about 440 this year. So we're still in a bit of a recovery mode from COVID.
And it's going to come back. I think
it's coming back.
People can't stay in the basement forever. When you look at what's happening in terms of the theater being active, the location of it, is it just too small? Does it need to be refreshed? What are we looking at and who are we competing against?
Sure. So the theater and the convention center are two different animals in this in this story. The theater is actually in pretty good shape. So from a sound and a lighting perspective and the size of our theater, it's actually really marketable. What's missing in our theater are aisles. So we have long rows in our theater.
Yes, yeah.
And if you're the people that are sitting in the middle, it's awkward for you. And some of the facts that we don't have aisles in our theater means we can't get some of the big Broadway shows like Lion King because their performers and their actors use those aisles when they come in. So our theater needs a bit of an upgrade, but basically it's okay. Our convention center is older than many convention centers that we're competing against. We are missing a lot of the components. First of all, size is quite small. The flow is just awkward. We have two main large gathering spaces in the newer part of the convention center, and those have very low ceilings. It's tough to get from one area of the building to the other. So our sweet spot for events in that convention center is between 600 and 800 people. So if the national event is larger than 800 people, it doesn't work so well in our building. And so we're losing those events to other cities. And when we lose those events, we lose that money into our system and our economy.
It brings forth the question, would people come to Saskatoon as opposed to Banff or Vancouver and so on? But there has to be a competitive advantage, I would think, in our market. Air travel, everything comes into play. The location is wonderful, where it's situated now. What can people say out there who are watching about our city, because it may be your grandson, your daughter that is working there? You employ a large number of people.
We do. So we have over 200 employees, part-time and between part-time and full-time. And then there's a number of other people that are impacted through the events that we have in our building, and businesses that we do business with. We are a strong force within the city of Saskatoon. Your first part of that was competing against places like Banff and Vancouver. We're a great building and we're a great city, but we're not going to compete against the three big convention centers in Toronto, Montreal, and Calgary, four: Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver. We're not competing against those ones, but we are competing against places like Winnipeg, like Halifax, Regina, Victoria, New Brunswick, London, Ontario. So those secondary markets, that's who we're competing against, as well as other countries. So we do get international events from the United States coming in. And so we need to stay competitive within our competitive set. If somebody wants mountains and they want to go to Banff, we're not competing with that. But if somebody wants a local experience in a great Canadiana city, Saskatoon is really high on that list, and we have some really great local offerings. We just need the building to match that. Because when convention planners or meeting planners choose a destination, they're not only they're looking at the building, and they're looking at the city, and they're looking at the overall experience. And so, we've got some really great offerings in our community. Our building needs to catch up. We're losing ground.
When you see some of the other convention centers, and I've been to a number of them, but there is a return on that investment when the city or the agencies that own the facilities invest in that. That comes back not just to that facility, but the wider area. And is there something that you can offer to us in terms of what we can expect, what you would like to see in terms of the convention center upgrades?
Sure. So what clients are looking for now, and they're being very specific since COVID, they're being very picky and specific about what they want. So if we don't have sustainability or green or environmental features built into our building, oftentimes we can't even bid on the RFP. We can't even bid to try to get that business. So that's one of the first questions they ask. So we're missing those components. We do what we can with recycling and waste diversion, but they're not built into our building like they would be in a newer building. So we're missing that one component. The other thing they're looking for is very flexible, adaptable, creative space. The days of the square box convention center and you put chairs in rows or in small tables are gone. Yeah. They're gone. People want playful, fun, innovative, creative, bright, naturally lit spaces, higher ceilings. They want the outdoors or the feeling of the outdoors inside, so lots of natural light, lots of greenery. They want easy access. So it's now, I think buildings were built in the past about a car focus, automobile focus, and now it's more pedestrian focused. So, when you invite people to your city, they're staying at the hotel, they're walking into the building, or even people in the community are parking somewhere and walking to your building. It has to be pedestrian friendly. And so we need that flexible, adaptable space so that we can host events that are for 1,000 people, 300 people, or multiple events at one time. And we're missing some of that adaptability. We have some of it, but we need better flow, better adaptability. Those are the big ones. And then connectivity. We have a cold winter city. And so if we can have some sort of connectivity to the hotels, then that is a sell for our meeting planners as well. We don't have that right now.
Is there any advantage to trying to build that linkage with pedestrian tunnels or walkways like they have in Calgary, the plus 15s or something like that?
I think that absolutely has to be part of the picture. I think to make it as convenient and easy and pleasant for people that are here in the middle of winter. We want to attract people in the winter. There tends to be peak seasons for conventions, and they're generally between that April, May, June, and then October, November. And so if we want to stretch that a little bit, because it's to our city's advantage to stretch that and have them here throughout the whole year, then we need to make it easy for people to get around in our city and easy for them to get from the convention center to the hotel.
You mentioned earlier that the spend by the convention goer, if they're not from the city, do we have a gauge for how much they might spend?
Yeah, so typical spenders that are just arriving in the city, it's anywhere between $135 to $240 that they would spend on a day, per day in the city. Leisure travelers are on the lower end of that. Business travelers typically spend about 4 times what a leisure traveler would spend.
Wow.
So that money goes directly to our community. And so you mentioned earlier your kids working in places, whether they're working at TCU Place or they're working at a hotel or they're working at one of the restaurants or at Midtown. When we have conventions here, all of those businesses do better.
What do you look at for the timeline if we gave you the pixie dust and said, here you go? What would that look like in your perfect world?
So the timeline I want is probably not the realistic timeline, but we're 7 to 10 years out. And important, we talked at the beginning about where I came from. I came here to build this building. It was what attracted me to Saskatoon when I looked at this job opportunity. So it's been front and center of my mind since I got here. We are 7 to 10 years out, though. We have a lot of work to do, and I think our opportunity now is to begin acting, and not to begin, to enhance the way that we're acting like a downtown entertainment district, even before we get that built.
Are there models that you see across Canada or maybe internationally that you would say, I'd like that from that city and this from that city?
So there's some really great centers, and some of the buildings in our competitive set. So Halifax Convention Center, they rebuilt in 2017, and they have 120,000 square feet. Doesn't really matter how much. We have 105,000 square feet. And so we're fairly close in terms of the square footage, but they can host events up to 2,300 people. And we can really host 600 to 800 person events. We can stretch it to 1,100 or so for a dinner. But the fact that they can regularly run 2,300 person events, before they even opened, they sold 50 new national conferences, 50,000 visitors were in the works, and about 59 million in economic impact before they even opened their renovated building. So that's a really great example. They built this really adaptable, flexible space. Another great example is Ottawa. Ottawa went from 30 million economic impact for the city to 250 million when they reopened. And now they went from more of a banquet hall to a full convention center that was really visible on the national stage. And they wanted to attract as many associations and organizations as possible. Ottawa's is really great because, again, they have big open space. Whatever we build has to have an element of our local environment. So the other thing that our clients are looking for are, it's got to be uniquely and representative of Saskatoon. So it has to look and feel like Saskatoon when they come into the building. And so there are some centers that have done a really great job with that. Vancouver is one. When you look at the Vancouver Convention Center, we don't compete with them because they're way bigger, but it is so iconically Vancouver. And that's what we need to build in our Saskatoon building.
If someone wanted to find out more about what you're planning and talking about, how would they get a hold of you?
So you can go online, first of all, tcuplace.com, or our box office line, which serves as our general information line, 306-975-7799.
We'll look forward to seeing more of that and you in the future with your plans.
Thanks, Randy.
That's our show for today. I'd like to thank our guest, Deputy Chief Randy Hoosman, and the CEO for TCU Place, Tammy Sweeney. I'm your host, Randy Shabilo. We'll see you next time on Connect.